Welcome to lesson 6. In this lesson, we're going to talk about project management life cycle. We'll cover the definition of a project life cycle. We'll talk about the 5 phases of a project life cycle. Now let's jump into it. First of all, let's know what a project life cycle is. A project life cycle is the path for your project from start to finish. Each project phase builds toward the subsequent phase and helps to create a structure for the project. The main purpose of the project lifecycle is to provide a unique path for your project implementation from start to finish. As you are aware, project is a unique endeavor which is temporary in nature, which has a start and end date. For the project to be implemented from start to finish, which it means that we need to have a unique path for our project, which means our project must start and end. For the project to start and end successfully, it needs to go through a life cycle. And that life cycle is the process. That life cycle is the pathway that the project takes to finish. As you can see on the screen, you see a sample of the project life cycle, which shows here the phases through which the project should go through in order to be implemented. The first phase of the project life cycle is the project initiation. In this phase, we design a project, we agree on what the project wants to achieve, we understand the problem, and we get to approve the project. And then the project planning phase is where we put the ideas together in a more detailed way and come up with strategies on how the project will be executed. Once the project is planned well, we move to the execution phase, which is the third phase in project life cycle. Then we have project monitoring and controlling phase, which is the fourth phase. And then we have project closure, which is the final phase in the project lifecycle. Now let's exploit on each phase of the project lifecycle to know what happened and what are the key things to focus on during each phase. Let's look at the project initiation phase, which is the first phase of the project lifecycle. The first thing we do here is the project initiation phase is the phase that allows us to define the project purpose, the project objectives, and the desired outcomes. In this phase, we now come up with the purpose of the project. We design the idea that we want to enhance, or we design the idea that the project is about. And this is coming up with new ideas, coming up with new strategies, and be able to identify problems. Again, projects are implemented to solve problems, meet needs, and improve situations. And of course, to implement a project, we need to come up with the idea. We need to agree on the solution or on the problem we're trying to solve. And what is the unique purpose for our project? It is also important to agree on what are the key objectives for the project. What are we going to achieve? Or what do we want to achieve at the end of the project? What are the desired outcomes? What will be the changes that the project will create? What will be the benefit of this particular project when it's implemented? Another aspect of the project initiation phase is to identify key stakeholders and their interests or requirements. Remember, every project involves stakeholders which could play different role on the project. Stakeholders include beneficiaries, project team, donors, and other stakeholders who are involved, even the community as well. We need to identify the different stakeholders that are involved in this project, and we need to look at the interest level they have and their key requirements for the project. Remember, every stakeholder will be engaged differently, and every stakeholder will have different interests. For instance, the beneficiaries will have interest of getting the benefit that the project can offer. While the donors will not have interest in that, the donors will be looking at how does this project benefit their program areas, how does this project contribute to their programmatic area, and how does this project contribute to their overall development agenda. The community will be interested in the overall development of the community. So the community will be looking at how does this project support that. Government ministries and agencies will be looking at how does this project align with government goals and how does this project align with national policies and strategic plan. So it is important to understand the different stakeholders that you need to engage and what are the key requirements and their interest level for your project. During the project initiation phase, we conduct a feasibility study to assess the project's viability, to understand the project very well and know what exactly we want to do and as to whether we are capable of doing this or we are capable of solving this problem or we are capable of carrying on this project. We conduct a feasibility study. The feasibility study will help us understand the problem that we are trying to solve and determine whether we are able to solve the problem. This will help us understand the resource requirements, the skills we need, the people we need, the financial resources, and other things we need to put in place in order to carry on the project. Once we have done the feasibility study, we develop the report that will inform us about the key areas that the project needs to address. Now we need to develop a project charter that outlines the project scope, the project goals, project deliverables, and the high-level project timeline. The project charter is a document that is developed after understanding the project from all areas, and we develop the project charter to give us a roadmap or a clear understanding of what the project wants to achieve. Here we need to outline the project scope. The project scope is exactly the deliverables or the key things that the project will conclude or will include. Those are things like including the number of beneficiaries, the specific tasks, and areas that the project will cover. This is very important because the project scope is an essential area that determines the resource requirements. The project scope also determines the success of the project. So we need to agree on what the project will include and what the project will not include. Remember, from the feasibility study, we identify a series of issues. For instance, if we want to implement a project regarding hand pump, we want to provide hand pump to the community. We got to know that during the feasibility study, we'll identify a series of issues regarding safe drinking water. We'll get to know why the people do not have access to safe drinking water. We'll get to know the situations they are going through and some of the challenges they face as a result of that. And once we understand this, we are able to now know, hey, what are we going to address? Again, there are a series of issues that will be coming up, and we can address all. So we need to agree on what the project will include. That is the project scope. The project goals will be looking at what the project is going to achieve. These are specific objectives that the project will meet at the end of the project. Why is the project existing? And why do we want to implement the project? Then we come up with the project deliverables. What are the unique deliverables for this project? For instance, our hand pump project, some of the deliverables could be the hand pump that we're going to construct, the people who are going to be using it, and also looking at the different reports that will be coming up from the project. And of course, we need to develop a project timeline which will communicate on when we are going to do everything that we want to do. So we have different tasks on the project. When are we going to do it, and what's the time frame? Again, the project has a start and end date. So here we need to come up with a clear agreement on the project timeline. Now, once we have initiated the project, we move into project planning. During the project planning phase, we create a detailed project plan that breaks down the work into manageable tasks. Remember, from the initiation phase, we have a clear understanding of what we need to do to carry on this project. During the planning phase, we go about more detail to outline the different tasks that we have. Here, we break down the tasks into manageable work that we are going to carry on. For instance, constructing a hand pump that we're going to do in the community. That is a huge work. Of course, we need to break down the task of constructing the hand pump. For constructing a hand pump, you might need to conduct surveys. You might need to go there, get the site, do assessment, and several other things. Apart from that, to construct the hand pump, you might need to do procurement of the materials, transportation of the materials, and all the different arrangements that need to be put in place. We also need to design the hand pump on how it's going to be by the engineers and other people. And apart from that, there might be some work like groundbreaking and several other things that we need to do. So all the smaller tasks that we are going to implement to get the hand pump constructed must be broken down in the planning phase. And also, during the planning phase, we need to define the project requirements. Here we're looking at what the project requirements are. Again, we'll reference the initiation phase where we have already defined the project scope. So we can look at the project scope and determine what the project requires in terms of the resources and other specific areas that the project will need. We also need to look at the project constraints. Again, project phase constraints including cost constraint, time constraint, scope or quality constraint, risk constraint, and other constraints. So we need to define these constraints, or in other words, the constraints or the challenges that we may face in terms of the resources. And how are we going to manage them? We can also develop assumptions here, that is our key expectations or conditions that the project should be able to meet. And then we can develop a work breakdown structure, WBS, to organize and structure project tasks. In this case, we want to make sure all the different tasks we need to carry on during execution, we have it well structured into a work breakdown structure. In this case, we have a list of activities or list of tasks that we need to carry on, and we have to break them down into structure in terms of dependency, in terms of what is going to be done first, in terms of what is going to be done second, and the rest of it. We also need to develop a resource plan, which is going to talk about the people we need to work with, the skills they need to have, their qualification, their experience. All of that need to be planned in the resource planning. Then we have the materials that we need. In the case of the hand pump project, what are the materials we need? We need to think about the materials as well because we have to procure them. Then we have people, the engineers that will be working to construct the hand pump and other people who will be performing different tasks. We got equipment that we'll be using as well to construct the hand pump. It might not be just our normal work that we're going to do. Of course, we need to create a resource plan to be able to detail how the people, the materials, and equipment will be used, and also what are the requirements for them. We need to establish a project schedule. In this case, we need to come up with a clear work plan to outline the different tasks and when each task will be implemented. Here we need to talk about the task dependency and the critical pathway analysis. The critical pathway analysis is looking at whether we are going from the start to finish or what kind of critical pathway analysis we're taking. Which tasks do we need to implement before we move to the next task? Of course, there are different methodologies you can use in project management. For instance, you got the linear approach. The linear approach in project management is where we implement tasks from start to finish and we don't overlap. That means we have to do A before we move to B. We have to do B before we move to C because A will determine us or A will prepare us to do B and the rest of it. While the agile approach or the iterative approach allows us to overlap different tasks. In this case, we can implement several tasks just at the same time and they can overlap. Of course, we don't have to do A before we do B. All right, so we need to also identify and analyze potential project risks and develop a risk management plan. So it's very important to also do this because project will experience risks, project will experience challenges. So we need to identify and analyze the potential risks that the project may encounter and what could be our strategy for responding to any. And then we need to set up a clear communication plan to effectively ensure that information will flow among team members and different stakeholders. In the communication plan, we can outline the key information that will be shared among team members, among stakeholders, and we can also come up with the frequency of reporting in terms of how often reporting will be done, what kind of report will be shared with who. And it's also important to establish the reporting or the communication channel among your stakeholders. In that, how will the team members communicate throughout the project? What is the medium of communication, channel of communication with stakeholders? And this is critical and important. And you also need to come up with a schedule in terms of meetings. How often are you going to meet to communicate and provide project updates or progress reports? All these are critical things that you need to consider during planning phase. We also need to create a budget. Of course, during the planning phase, we need to come up with a detailed budget. Here, we need to include the cost estimates, the financial resources, and other monitoring mechanisms that we need to put in place. It's during the planning phase we do a detailed budget, which will be itemized budget. And then now we move to execution phase, which is the third phase in project management. At this point, we already have a roadmap, which is the project plan. And here we are just to carry on the action. But what are some of the key things we need to do when we are executing the project? Number one, we need to implement the project plan by assigning tasks to team members. So one of the key things we'll do, of course, we have already done it in the project plan by assigning tasks or developing a work plan. And of course, we need to implement this by assigning tasks and ensuring that team members are working. We need to provide clarity or instructions to team members. When you assign team members to tasks, you need to tell them what exactly they need to do. You need to tell them the expectations of that particular task and what they need to do and how to do it. You also need to provide guidelines and other support to team members to ensure that they are able to carry on the tasks. You need to monitor project progress and track the actual work being done throughout the project execution phase. And this is very essential for project success because monitoring is an important aspect. Project is not It's not something that we need to plan and just leave it going strictly as planned. Of course, we need to monitor the project to see how far we're going, whether we are making progress, whether we are doing as planned, and what are some of the challenges that we could address. And of course, doing monitoring phase, we will be able to identify several things. And of course, we need to work on them, improve on them, and be able to adjust changes any if necessary. Then we have to manage changes and address any other issues that we may also identify during the monitoring also of the project execution phase. We need to conduct regular team meetings, and this is very important. Of course, here we are implementing now, okay? So we need to conduct regular team meetings as we have already done it in the communication plan. So we need to talk about this. We need to have communication flowing among team members and ensuring that people are collaborating and working together to achieve the project results. We also need to manage the project resources, including the project people, the project finances, and also looking at the project materials and equipment. We need to manage them effectively and efficiently to achieve the project results. We need to adhere to quality standards and project specifications. During implementation, we need to watch out to be sure that we are delivering what is required, we are delivering according to the standards we have agreed on in the project, and we are also carrying on the project according to the specifications in the project document. We need to also collect and document project data for monitoring and evaluation purposes. Throughout your execution phase, you need to make sure you document, collect and document project data, project information, project reports, and ensure that you save them, you keep them for monitoring and evaluation purposes. Monitoring and evaluation will be done, and of course, monitoring is done throughout the project implementation phase, which is done regularly, while evaluation will be done periodically. For instance, it can be done at the middle, it can be done at the end of the project. Then the fourth phase is the project monitoring and controlling phase. The project monitoring and controlling phase helps us to track project activities against the project plan. Here we need to continuously track that to ensure that we are achieving or we are implementing the project activities according to the plan. We need to monitor project milestones to be sure we are achieving what we have planned for. And we need to also look at the timelines as we have agreed on what timeline we need to carry on with the project. Every task needs to be implemented on a specific timeline. So we need to make sure we monitor that. We need to monitor the deliverables as to whether we are delivering what is required of us. We need to compare the actual work we are doing with the plan that we have made. So of course we have plan and we have the work that we are doing on ground. So we need to compare them to see whether we have any issue with deviations from the plan and whether we are doing something different from what is in the plan. And of course, we need to make adjustments if we identify any. And then we also need to assess and manage project risks by implementing risk mitigation strategies. So yeah, we need to look at the risks that we have planned for in the phase two. And of course, we need to regularly monitor and ensure that we have the strategies that to put in place being carried on. And we need to maintain effective communication with stakeholders and provide regular updates. So it's important to make sure that stakeholders are informed regularly about the project updates. They are giving progress reports. They are giving other essential updates regarding the project so that they get to know what is going on and how far the project is being implemented. We also need to conduct regular project starter reviews and adjust the plan as needed. It's important because we don't want to wait for the project to end before we do that. For instance, if you're implementing a project for 1 year, you wouldn't want to wait for the whole year to end before you come to check your project status to know how far you've done. But the reality is, if you do it for like 3 months, you come and check. If you do it for another 6 months, you come and check. That will help you know what you're doing well and what you're not doing well so you can make adjustments. Of course, if you wait for the project to end before you do this, there'll be no room for correction. So that's why it's important to conduct regular progress or project starter reviews and ensure that you make adjustments to your plan as necessary. And also, you need to monitor and control project costs. Of course, we need to work within the budget that we have planned. So we need to make sure that we monitor the costs to ensure that we track expenses and we are making sure we follow the plan we have in our budget. So we need to ensure that we stick within the budget. Other than that, we will experience cost constraint, and we don't want to because it will affect our project. We need to use the project management tools and techniques to monitor and control project progress. There are several management tools you can use like Asana, Monday.com, Project Manager, Trello, and several other project management tools. They are online and available for you. You can search them out to read more about them and be able to exploit in using these different tools. It will make your work easy and very much effective and efficient. And of course, you'll be able to monitor a project in real time and ensure that your project is making progress. Then the last phase in project life cycle is the project closure phase. At this phase, you're trying to get close with everything. You're making sure that everything is well done and completed. One of the things you need to do here is to conduct an evaluation on the project sources against the defined objectives. Of course, at the beginning of the project, we have a clear objective that we intended to achieve. So we need to go back to the initiation phase and see what we have agreed on as to whether we actually achieved this. We also need to conduct a final review and document lessons learned. Here we need to look at what we agree and do a checklist of things that we achieved and things that we did not. And here we need to look at what are some of the key lessons we can learn from this project. Looking at the challenges we encounter, looking at the way we work, looking at all the different processes involved coming from initiation to the end of the project. We can document several lessons to learn from the process to improve on future projects. Of course, we need to complete all the project deliverables and obtain approvals as necessary. Here we need to verify as to whether we have completed all project tasks or we have done all project deliverables, especially when it comes to reports, and we have donors to approve the project results. Once that is done, we can transition the project outputs or results to the appropriate stakeholders. In the case of the hand pump project, we can dedicate or turn over the hand pump to the community. And then we can close out the contracts, all the different contracts we have with vendors, we have with part-time employees and other people or consultants. We can close all the contracts because the project has now ended. We can release resources, including people, materials, equipment, and other resources to go back. And we can also perform some basic administrative tasks, especially when it comes to documentations for maybe auditing purposes and all that. So we also need to celebrate the project success and recognize the contributions of all the project team. So it's important to celebrate your team after you have accomplished an amazing task like project management. It can be an easy thing to do. And of course, you need to celebrate that moment with your team and recognize the efforts and contributions of everyone in the project to ensuring that the project was a success. Of course, that is a very amazing time to do so. In conclusion, by following the structured process of project management approach of this different life cycle that we mentioned, initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and controlling, and then closure, it's important that organization can increase the likelihood of successful project completion. You will meet the stakeholder expectations. You will also be able to deliver desired outcomes while effectively managing your project constraints throughout the project lifecycle. Thanks for completing this lesson. I hope you enjoy it, and then you move on to the next lesson where you'll be able to learn more about the project management knowledge areas and other areas in project management. Enjoy learning.